Hey, we're live.
All right.
Hey, I'm Jessica Patel, and this is Jenn Ashburn, my old neighbor and really good friend, and Maisie, who is my rescue.
She's the best.
She's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so please comment to let us know you're here, and if you have questions, if you post them, we can answer those for you. Today we're going to talk about rescuing versus buying a dog from a breeder, and I've asked Jenn if she wouldn't mind if we talk to her about it because she has experience volunteering at the shelter, the local shelter here. So Jenn, can you describe your role at the local animal shelter?
Yeah. So I've been volunteering at the shelter for the past 4 years. I go in and help in the dog kennel area. So walking dogs, playing with dogs, socializing dogs. I've fostered, and we've also got a training program that's run by our trainer that we have on staff, so that dogs who come to us with certain behavioral issues get some consistency in their routine and can start working towards the manners that are expected of them when they are adopted and brought into a home.
That's really cool. So I guess I'm gonna go a little out of order here since you're talking about behavior problems because
Okay.
Maisie here, certainly not perfect. So what are some common behavioral problems that adopters might experience?
So every dog is different, which is probably going to be the theme of our chat today. Every dog has its own personality and its own background that they've come from. There are going to be different things that might set your dog off, specific things that they're afraid of. Some dogs are afraid specifically of men. Some dogs react to baseball caps or car keys or a broom. It could be anything. Um, the dogs that we have at the shelter often that are struggling, they're maybe a year or 2 years old, and so they're not quite puppies anymore, but they're not adults in their mentality and their training. Yeah, like Maisie. They push their boundaries, especially around the terrible two time. So we will get a little less listening. Maybe energy is still a factor. So they might have bursts of energy and their outlets are limited. They can't say, Mom, I need to go for a run. They instead jump around or bark to get your attention or nip at your toes or ankles or sleeves, or the leash. They might jump for the leash and try to play tug of war with that, which is really unsafe when you're in the middle of the street. We also have some socialization concerns. Not all dogs like other dogs. Not all dogs like all other dogs. Some dogs look at other dogs, too directly or too assertively, and you might get some barking at other dogs in the street or in the window. I think my dog is about to come bark at the window right now. I hear her running up the stairs. And so some behavioral issues are much easier to control with um, energy and exercise, and others require more training, more counter conditioning, and more positive association with the things that might be setting them off.
Thank you. Hi, Charlotte. Charlotte's watching. She also has a rescue. Can you
Hi,
believe it? So what advice, based on your experience, do you have for owners who encounter these behavior problems?
you know, talking to the rescue, especially if it's a new dog to your home, talking to the rescue or foster or shelter about what you're noticing. Maybe the foster, especially now that we're in a pandemic, most animals are in foster right now, which is awesome because they've been in a home, they've been observed on a daily basis by someone who knows how to react to those things. So they can give you some feedback on maybe what worked for them or what they did differently in their routine. Some dogs might have been perfectly calm to the foster, but they weren't the only dog. And so they had a lot of playtime. And now they're the only dog in the home, which is totally fine. It just means that they might need a little more exercise than you were aware of at first. So reaching out to the foster who knows them, reaching out to the shelter if you went through a shelter. Most shelters have a behaviorist or trainer on staff who can talk to you for free and give you some advice and maybe even bring you in for an hour or do a Zoom training for an hour to go over some things that are worth trying. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there's a rule of threes, especially if we're talking about a new dog to the family. Once you bring a dog home, generally it takes 3 days for the dog just to decompress after being in a shelter or recovering from change. So 3 days to decompress, 3 weeks to learn the routine. And then it's another 3 months for them to really feel like they're at home. So even though you bring the dog in to your family and like make that switch in your head, the dog still needs that time to adjust. So don't the way you would treat the dog on day one is not the way you would treat the dog at year one of having a dog.
My mom says woof. Hi, John. Yeah, I think another thing we hired a trainer and you've been helping us with Maisie some that we've noticed Maisie likes to jump and lunge at other dogs on a leash. I've learned that it's all about how I'm holding the leash and my emotions and the emotions of the other dogs and other people around. And they really, like little kids, they feed on it. And they just like a little kid might react if you're in a bad place yourself. So combination of like being calm with your dog and also positive reinforcement. Yeah. Also taught us to say good and then yes when you're and that's also really helpful.
Yeah, and I think training and dog ownership is so much about building confidence, figuring out what you want in terms of boundaries and lifestyle. There's a lot to figure out, especially if it's a new dog and you've never had a dog. So doing that training with your pet is a great way to bond with them and just learn the behavior that's most effective. And it really is about training the human more than the dog. The dog is going to do what you ask him to do. And it is completely reactive to tension in the leash, tension in your back. I mean, it's amazing the emotions and stress that they pick up on. Just the slightest bit of fear that isn't visible to the human is entirely visible to the dog.
Right. Hi, Allie. The other thing that I've learned after we got Maisie just in November is that, you know, the dynamic in your household also has an impact on them. So sometimes she'll go across the street to my neighbor's house where it's just 2 adults screaming children, and she's much better behaved over there.
Right. But she's also got an outlet with her doggy friend, so they can run and play and get all of that energy out.
Right. So my next question is, why? I know you're a strong believer in doing rescue as opposed to getting a dog from a breeder. So why do people ought to consider rescuing a dog as opposed to purchasing a dog?
Well, I think that with research in recent years, we as a society are more aware of the dangers of puppy mills, breeders who breed en masse and really don't take the time to think about the pair of dogs that they're breeding and the health of the puppies that they are selling. So there are reputable breeders and there are puppy mills. And the problem is that you don't always know exactly where you're getting a puppy, especially if you're going to a pet store. So you have to be careful there. When you rescue a dog, you are literally saving a dog's life. Maybe that dog wasn't for being put down, but other dogs were. And shelters have a limited amount of space. So what I learned in 2019, 6.5 million dogs and cats went through shelters in a year. Right. 6.5 million dogs, and only 700,000, sorry, dogs and cats, only 700,000 were strays that were returned to their home. So that's a little over 5 million animals that need homes. And shelters are putting down 1.5 million animals every year.
Wow.
So it's a lot. It's a lot of animals. Only 3.2 million dogs and cats were adopted from shelters or rescues last year. And still, we have more people buying from breeders than adopting from rescues. And the thing is that population, like there are dogs out there are puppies out there for rescue. There isn't a need for so many breeders.
So why do you think so many people choose to go the breeder route? Is it because they want a purebred dog?
Yeah, I think some people really love specific breeds and want to ensure that they have that breed, and the shelter and rescue isn't guaranteed to have the Labrador or the Golden Doodle or the Setter or Shepherd or Husky or whatever you're looking for. If you have a specific breed in mind, then shelters may not have it. However, there are breed-specific rescues that you could go to.
Right. Like I know I was looking for golden retrievers and I found the Great Rescue. It took a very long time for them to get back to me. And by the time they got back to me, I had already adopted this child here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are common misconceptions out there surrounding shelter dogs?
So I think the biggest misconception is the reason that the dogs end up in our care. And I'm sure this is the same for cats, but I'm going to focus on the dogs since that's where most of my experience is. I think people assume that dogs are in the shelter because they were bred. And that's not really the case. 47% of dogs are brought in for personal issues. And that could be behavioral, or it could be that they had a medical issue that the family wasn't able financially to take care of. Or it could be something as silly as they got the dog as a puppy and didn't think the dog would grow to be so big. So, sometimes dogs have behavioral issues. Sometimes they haven't been given all of the training, all of the consistency, and all of the veterinary care that they needed. But that doesn't mean that if you go to a breeder, you will never have to train that dog. Every dog is going to need training. It just means that you are given a snapshot of what you need to train that dog on. So you know a little bit more about the dog before you bring them home and before they get to be bigger.
Thank you. So to follow up on that, what are some reasons, I guess, or what are some misconceptions about specific breeds?
Every breed has expectations, both good and bad, in terms of temperament, in terms of how they behave with children or other dogs. They also have expectations for health concerns. So maybe you know a little bit about what you're getting into, but it's not always the case. I know my brother probably overpaid for a Korean Jindo, and he was so excited about this dog, and he was expecting a dog that would only care about him, that would only take food from him, would only walk with him, would only listen to him. He even trains him in Italian, so that literally no one else could give him directions. That dog, you put a treat in front of his nose, and he'll do everything you ask him to. Go to your crate. So that was not an expectation, and it's for the best, because I really don't agree with the reasons my brother was getting that dog. But you know, that is a selling point for a security dog or a watchdog. Hasby, go lay down. I also there was a study done to determine if purebred dogs are actually calmer than mixed breed dogs. And they kind of put them through a lot of things. They were actually found to be calmer and like well behaved. But purebred dogs and mixed breed dogs were found to be equally intelligent and equally trainable. And the study concluded that it's actually a financial disparity, because healthier families can afford to pay thousands of dollars for a purebred dog. And so they're going to put more training into their investment of this pet, whereas a mixed breed dog doesn't cost as much. And maybe the amount of money that the family is willing to spend on training is not as good.
Right. So it's like the data is not totally, accurate, because there are all these other factors.
So many environmental factors.
So where should families start if they're looking for a dog? What organizations do you recommend? I know I love A Forever Home, because that's where I got Maisie.
Right.
Some experiences and places that you would suggest people look.
Yeah. The local shelter, there are online resources that connect you to rescues and shelters. I think Pet Finder is a lot to look at, but it's a good starting point. I think the best way to start is to have a conversation with someone who knows dogs, whether it's someone at the shelter or a friend who's had dogs for a long time, someone who can really help you assess your current lifestyle and what you should really be looking for in terms of size, age, energy. All of those questions have to be considered before you bring the dog into the house. And honestly, so many shelters and rescues are looking for fosters right now and lowering barriers to foster. Why not bring a homeless dog into your house and have the support of the organization to help you navigate that? Hey, in your face.
When I went to meet Maisie at A Forever Home, her story was like, was really hard because she had been returned. First, I wanted to know why she had been returned.
Right.
So in the first year of her life, she had 4 different homes. So she started with a foster, and then as a puppy, she got adopted. A family that couldn't give her any exercise, and then they just put her in a crate all the time. So she didn't, during her prime socialization, she was just crated, and she couldn't go on walks and meet other dogs. And then at the 3rd home was when she was returned to a different foster. And then her 5th home was with us. And so we had to kind of reteach her how to be with other pets. And we're still doing that now. But I think a lot of those questions, they didn't really know leash behavior because their dog and her exercise was going in the backyard with that other dog.
Yeah.
She didn't really know how to walk on a leash. But they also told me, she will chew things up. So before she came home, I hid my expensive shoes. So you can ask those questions. If you have things lying around your house all the time, maybe a chewer is not for you.
Right. Or maybe just a basket of toys as an option would be enough. And you could slowly replace those things that you normally have around the house, right? Dogs do actually know what they're allowed to have and what they're not allowed to have.
Do they really? Because this one likes toys more than her toys.
Oh, no. Children's toys are another story, I think.
Yeah, they're very similar. They're squeaky and plushy. So what questions should adopters ask when they're looking for a new pet? Like what would you ask if you were looking for a new pet? What do you suggest?
I think asking about the dog's routine. So assuming the dog is in foster right now, asking about, morning, where they sleep, what time they eat, how much they eat,
What time they wake up?
then, yeah. Asking if they're crate trained, if they've been exposed to other animals, children. All of that is good to know. Most shelters and rescues have a thorough questionnaire that they go through when an animal is returned or surrendered. And so they should know, based on the family's responses, if there was anything that set them off, if there was anything that calmed them down, if they had basic training, if they had allergies. Like, there are so many medical and behavioral questions that are answered, that even if the dog was a stray, you can get that information from the foster now, which is really helpful. Some dogs want leisurely walks. Some dogs need to run 10 miles, once a week. Yeah. Yeah, she's a good runner.
She's a great runner. Yeah. I have another question for you that wasn't on our list, so I'm sorry if this is going to catch you off guard. But I have a friend who has a dog who's very shy.
Mm-hmm.
She's done really well since changing homes, but she's very fearful. Often tail between her legs, and she won't sit. So when it comes to training a dog who's got some fear, do you have any advice for her?
Never yell. Yelling makes it worse. A lot of patience, a lot of positive reinforcement for the behavior that you want. And I think trying different environments in a safe way, right? So what you and I learned with Maisie is that she behaves differently when she's outside of her neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that fear The fear is a response. So if she's comfortable in the house, then do lots of training in the house and then just outside of the house. If she's not at all comfortable in the neighborhood, try an empty trail. Usually the fearful dogs, there's something setting them off, whether it's loud noises, traffic, too many people out and about. And so trying to manipulate those different little factors might give you a little bit more insight into what's going on. And any way you can boost their confidence and continue to get positive behavior and good experiences.
Thank you. And I guess lastly, would you care to share your stories with us about your dogs?
So I was telling you before we started that Crosby was a maniac when we first got him. He was my first dog. He's the reason we got involved in the shelter. Because after dealing with him when he was 1.5 years and completely untrained, we felt like we could deal with anything. He would bite at our shoes. He would demand attention. I had to teach him how to play tug because he would just bite up the toy up your fingers trying to win. He would jump at the leash at random times, and then he would stop in the middle of the street. If we were crossing the street, he would just stop and stand there and like stare down cars. So I had to work on having treats at all times if we were walking. So treats to get across the street, treats to get him to sit when other dogs were around, treats to get him to sit when he started jumping up and down. And, I think I recommended to you, the Parks Authority was the best way for me to get some basic training under my belt for a decent price. And so those local resources really do help, and it's all problem solving, just changing little things and looking for something to reward in order to get the best version of your dog. And Crosby's a dream to walk now for the most part, unless he's got a little bit of energy.
And what about Paisley?
Paisley is the polar opposite. She's a dream in the house. She's so sweet and so snuggly, and really a big couch potato of a pit bull. But she won't walk with us. She reacts to all of the scary noises that she hears outside. She'll tuck her tail and run back to the house. And so just building her confidence has taken 2 years to get her comfortable walking up and down the sidewalk in front of our house. And she's a little reactive. She barks at dogs like Maisie does when they're outside. But we work on that too. And she's the best foster fail ever. She's a sweetheart.
I remember when you got her.
Yeah, she was my Christmas present. Total surprise. We weren't planning on having a second dog. We were fostering so many dogs, like just one after another. And sometimes you have one that you just can't bear to give back or give to someone else.
Yeah, I would imagine that'd be really tough.
Yeah, it is. But it's not the hardest part. Fostering, for people who have never fostered before, it takes a lot out of you. It's always an adjustment when you add something new to your family. So even if you have 2 dogs already, adding a third, have a little bit extra anxiety of how is everyone going to react to each other, and how's that dog gonna react the first thing I leave the house or pull out a toy for them to play with. So everything has to be done cautiously. So integrating them into the family is a challenge. And then you're looking for, what can I tell my organization about this animal? Like, what are the pros and cons, and what kind of family would this dog be best suited for? And so there's so many questions. And it's hard thinking about letting them go, but usually by that point, the adopters and are ready to get the family a little bit back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And you were never supposed to keep that one anyways. Usually, we only had Paisley 2 weekends, and we just knew.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jen. Do you have any other words of wisdom, advice for anybody watching today?
Just adopt, don't shop.
Yeah. Thank you.
Give me a platform, Jessie.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.